It's time to get educated on the craziness impacting K-12 classrooms and college campuses around the world. This is the Dr. Duke Show.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Dr. Duke Show. We've got a great show. Please hit the share button. Help us sharing with other people as well as you watch the show. Today's show is sponsored by Mike Lindell and our good friends at MyPillow. This week, MyPillow is offering Giza Elegance Pillow Excellence, down from $90 to just $30. That's a heck of savings. Talk about a perfect gift for the impending holidays. Who would not like to sleep better? You simply use the code Dr. Duke, that's DRDUKE, plus you can save up to 66% on other items when you use the code Dr. Duke. Okay, we start in Virginia, where educational achievement continues to fall off a cliff as high school students are being told they no longer have to take assignments home or final exams seriously. It's unbelievable now. We've decided that because of COVID, it's just too hard to actually have our kids do a full year of school. We talked we talked yesterday about teachers who just didn't want to teach anymore. They were broken down. They couldn't handle it. We're going to see that a lot today as well. When did we get to the point where kids can't sit around to learn? Kids are incapable of sitting there and learning. Teachers are unwilling and unable to spend all their time in the classroom doing what we paid them to do. It is a creepy world where the more school, as we formerly understood it, school is a place that you went and you got a rigorous education in math and science. You became literate. You became cultural aware. You knew how to read and write. That model is completely collapsing in front of us. And public schools now are nothing more than really ideologically driven daycare centers. 2 or 3 hours a day is all they want to be there. They want to be able to fill your kid's head full of all kinds of sex and progressivism, but they really don't want to have them around much. And the teachers themselves, it's too exhausting. It's too exhausting not making your kids educated. They need breaks.
Well, and since we're talking about, it's the holiday season and we are at the end of getting to the end at least of semesters and it's, holiday breaks are upon us, usually that would be the time when kids would kind of like, oh, let's this class period sit and watch a Christmas movie instead of, learning about anything. But it appears, at least here at Alexandria City High School, why bother the entire semester, the entire year? Because these kids know that it doesn't matter how they do on these final exams that they would normally be taking about now, or at least preparing for to take them maybe come early January, depending on when the semester ends. It doesn't matter. Principal Peter Ballas, he had to remind the parents. We just want to make sure you're aware, parents, because we care so much about your kids that just so you know, how they do on their exams, it doesn't matter. And so they made sure to tell the parents that. They sent out an email to remind them, saying that their adjusted grading policies, which was passed by their district board members, it aims to mitigate the impact of the pandemic, on the students. So these policies, which effectively make it so that students don't need to try at all on your final exams or worry about completing their homework assignments. I mean, that would be a dream for any of you lazy kids, but this is what their truth is.
You take a look at what this sheet has to say. Quote, a final exam for a year-long semester course will only be counted if it does not lower the student's final grade. So why would you take or even study for a final exam if it will only count if it doesn't lower your grade? The lowest grade that may be awarded on a final exam is 50%. Way to go. You get half the points for showing up. Final exams may be project-based or performance-based opportunities that include components begun prior to the final exam. So you could turn final exams into work they've already done to make it seem like they've done more. And take a look at the last one up there. For courses with no final exam or for which a final summative assessment or project is incorporated into the quarter grade, the final grade is the average of the quarter grade. So everything is dumbing deviance down now, rewarding laziness, rewarding incompleteness, telling kids that it doesn't really matter. This goes back to Common Core, when the teachers were telling kids it doesn't really matter how you score on the Common Core test. Now it's the final exams in your own classrooms with the teachers you've been studying under, theoretically anyway, for 9 months that we don't have to account for.
But I mean, it's not even just the grades in what they can get. It's the fact that I just didn't feel like turning in on time. I mean, I did it, but I don't want to, hand it in when I'm supposed to. So that's okay. You get a 1-week minimum grace period with no penalty, and that's going to be used for all assignment deadlines. So at minimum, you get a whole extra week. I'm glad these kids someday will go into the workforce and come into work hopefully on time or whatnot, and be like, I couldn't get my work done.
Katie,
I get a minimum.
That day is with us.
I know it is.
These graduates are the ones who 4 million strong quit their jobs rather than go and have to work an 8-hour shift, have to be there on time, have to be responsible at the job they do. They just quit the workforce.
Daddy government is taking care of them.
That's right.
Okay,
They're getting
so
paid.
Daddy government, I'm here for you, Daddy. Anyway, the students who do fail to complete the assignment during even the grace period due to, absences or quarantines, they are allowed to then turn their assignments in for full credit. And then you get 2 weeks before, all the way up until 2 weeks before the end of the quarter. So you have basically the whole quarter to do that. So, kids, why even start worrying or even attempting to do any work for more than 1 day out of the whole semester to take care of it all? And no matter what, you're still going to get pretty much an A or a B or a C. It's good enough to pass. C's get degrees, and in at least, this case, they're all about it.
At my university, I see the same thing. These are kids that are willing to barter for C's as long as they don't have to achieve anything. And even when you give them an opportunity to say, hey, you want to grade better than this, you need to do this. No, that's fine. It is a really interesting phenomenon. With everything else that the public schools have ruined, they've ruined the ethos of education. It's not something kids really want. If they have to work for it, if they have to do unusual things for it, if it requires them, the one that I told you about many times, and I've mentioned this to you guys before, I've got English majors that don't like to read. I've got freshmen in college, the first class in a freshman English seminar, who've never read a book. In their own words, they've never read a book cover to cover in their educational lives. They're 18 years old. They've been in school since they were 13. They've never been asked to read a book cover to cover. They don't like to read. They're not interested in reading. It doesn't bother them that they cannot write. They've got emojis, they've got autocorrect on their cell phones. They don't really care how they reflect themselves anymore.
Are you a fan of the show? Consider joining the Patriot Club. Your tax-deductible donation of $99 a year keeps us going. Simply visit patriotclub.us. That's patriotclub.us to pledge your support and receive our signature tumbler as a token of our appreciation. We've got much more to come. Stay with us.
We've hounded on Virginia. Probably not enough, but enough for now. So we'll just go to their neighbor and rag on Maryland for a while, because we know in Baltimore, overall, their schools demonstrate everything wrong with education. And all of Maryland is having to pay for what Baltimore continues to not do in the form of, educating the children. So Maryland, the state, has spent nearly $93 million to educate their students, with the ones who have not actually been attending school at all. And Project Baltimore, which of all the local stations, news stations across the country, I think Project Baltimore actually does some journalism and investigative journalism and looks into what is happening in the Baltimore school system, since it's atrocious. And they've come out with good stories. In this instance, they discovered that thousands of students had been marked whereabouts unknown by their schools, and they identified several what they call ghost students whose name may have appeared on rosters even after they stopped pursuing public education. So they were ghosted, as the kids are saying these days. But that, because their names are on the roster, that name then helps boost the school's amount of money that they get. And back in 2019, there were 6,126 such students. In the same year, Maryland schools received an average of $15,148 per student. Let's do the math. That's $92,796,648 in education dollars. Couldn't be found.
This is graft. This is corruption at the highest level. You're getting paid almost $100 million for kids that are supposed to be in your school but aren't. And where is the outrage? If this was where's the IRS? Where in the world is the IRS? If you owned a private business and did this, they'd be up in your junk. They'd be checking your polyps, right? for illegal money transfers. Now you've got $100 million in graft in the public school system. It's as if the IRS has no role to play in keeping our public schools honest. Yes, Katie, you're right. Take a look at it was worse than you think.
It's unacceptable for taxpayers' money to go for students that are knowingly not in the school system.
Project Baltimore analyzed state data and found at Augusta Fells, 40 students in 2019 were labeled W50, which means whereabouts unknown. Throughout the entire state in 2019, it was 6,126 students. Maryland schools in 2019 received on average $15,148 of funding per student. That adds up to nearly $93 million to educate students that, according to state data, could not be found.
The fact that we're funding students whose whereabouts are unknown, and not a small number, thousands, and it adds up to tens of millions of dollars, that's something that needs to be looked at.
Francho, who is now running for governor, says to fix the problem, we must change the way schools are funded. Right now, Maryland schools receive 100% of their funding based on the number of students enrolled by September 30th.
So you think it does make more sense to fund schools based off attendance than this 1 day a year enrollment on September 30th?
Yes, I do agree with that. It's a very simple solution. Instead of taking one tally at September 30th to see who's in school and who's out of school, they need to do it monthly.
Francho says tying funding to attendance would also give schools an incentive to engage kids and keep them in the classrooms.
It's almost as if it makes sense. And that was the comptroller, Peter Francho, who is running for governor as a Democrat. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in his race. But in the video there, they talked about those 40 students from the Augusta Fells High School, which is in West Baltimore. Here's a fun little example of one of these students who is not actually attending school. In April, Project Baltimore spoke to a man whose name had appeared on this list of students for Augusta Fells High School. And he had told Project Baltimore that he may have been enrolled, but he wasn't in school because he was in jail. As he said, I didn't enroll in the classes or anything. I've been gone since 2017, buddy. So that's what you have going on in Baltimore schools, and Maryland is footing the bill for all of it.
Go back to my lament. If this was you and me engaging in this kind of graft in our businesses, we would be in jail. And there is no conceivable consequence for anybody in the public schools who are reaping in this money for no good cause.
And I just want to reiterate again, because, you know, we've been harping on Virginia for so long that it's time Baltimore gets a little dose of medicine. This is the same Project Baltimore who had taken a look at the Baltimore City schools, and they had a chart, and it showed the average GPA for every high school in the whole city. And it was freshmen all the way through to seniors. And in the first 3 quarters of the past school year, 41% of all Baltimore City high school students earned below a 1.0 grade point average. I'll say it again. 41% of all of the high school students all through Baltimore had lower than, smaller than, less than, I'll do all of the things I can, a 1.0 grade point average. In case you didn't know, it goes all the way up to 4.0. So that's real bad. Out of the nearly half of the 20,500 high school students in Baltimore then earned less than a D, as in dog.
That would be
average.
an F. Less than a D is an F.
Today's show is sponsored by Clean Start Hand Sanitizer. For an odor-free foam hand sanitizer that lasts 2 hours and provides 19 refills, visit freedomproject.com/clean. That's KLEEN to order yours today.
So not just to pick on only Baltimore and all of Maryland, let's pick on all of Maryland, where the at least Montgomery Board of Education, we're going to go specifically to them, they just called a special meeting. They had to have a special meeting so that they could change the calendar because, according to them, they made a little oopsie, or a procedural mistake, if you want to call it that. And so now Montgomery County public school teachers and administrators have some more days off. Woo.
With what you just saw in the last story, non-educating over 6,000 kids and breaking in $93 million for not doing it.
Well, that's Baltimore.
Now,
This is Montgomery.
now we're letting them off, the teachers, because it's too hard to be them.
Yeah, Maryland has a whole lot going on. Baltimore over here, Montgomery County over here. We got it all. Now, there was a special meeting, as I said. It was called after what, again, School Board President Brenda Wolf said was a procedural mistake. And, you know, we need to change the calendar. So the new calendar gives teachers the week off between Christmas and New Year's, but it also allows other staffers, such as janitors, time off when they normally would have to work. And with the change, many of the staffers who aren't teachers also have holiday time off. And it's saying that in the meeting that some 10 employees might now get double pay if they actually do have to work through the system, like system-wide closure. So if there's a system-wide closure, there might be a couple people who have to work, but hey, you get double pay. I'll take that. I'll be one of the people. You don't have to deal with the teachers, students, administrators being there. It's just you and the school, and who knows what you're doing, but you're getting paid double, so it's all good. And now they also added there are 3 early release days in the spring semester. We're going to have 8 system-wide closures. For what? Well, we're just going to call it what we want. Take a look.
I think that while it doesn't do nearly as much for teachers as is needed, it is a step in the right direction.
Our teachers and our administrators and our other employees need a break so that they can refresh and do a better job with our students.
I just want transparency and honesty. If they want a break for the staff, then just say that. Don't mask it as professional development.
You teach for 9 months. 9. You teach for 9 months. That's it. And you have slotted lunch periods. You have slotted periods when you're overseeing homeroom or independent study or recess. You teach 9 months. And you can't do it? Half your class isn't even there. You can't do this? This is unbelievable what these educrats are saying. They need time to refresh. Refresh what? Dawn Inako Han, an MCPS parent, said, quote, we just saw her. I want transparency and honesty. If you're going to call it professional development, you're lying to us. They're not in classes learning things. They're not going back for their own classes. You're just telling them to go home and take it easy.
And another parent, who was Dr. Jennifer Linton Reisman, actually said they've given us conflicting reasons, saying that on one hand it's for professional development, on the other hand it's for planning time, which are 2 very different things. All we know is that they've cut instructional time for children across the board here in Maryland, and parents here, we are furious. We're fed up about this. ... Except we're not fed up enough. Because what would the logical next step be? Take the kids out of the school, do it yourself, but they're not doing that. So we're fed up to the point of, I'm mad.
I say what I said last week. This is going to be my refrain now from week to week. Here's what the public schools really want. They want a homeschool schedule, but they don't want to have to teach anything. You know, the typical homeschool mom teaches 2 or 3 hours a day and then has a day free for extracurricular activities. That's what the public schools want. They want 2 or 3 hours a day for your kids, but they don't want to have to teach them anything in that 2 or 3 hours except ideology, politics, and sex. This is going to be the model of the future. Just make public school kids go from 10 until 1 with a free government-sponsored lunch and breakfast before and after. Make them go from 10 to 1, and you teach them hour 1, radical sexuality. Hour 2, critical race theory. Hour 3, social emotional wellness. And then you send them home. Meanwhile, the onus then falls on the parents. What they're going to expect is, for 8 hours a day, mom and dad have to actually do the real teaching in the classroom. Now, mind you, for that 3 hours a day they're willing to teach, they still get paid full price for their services. It's time now for some real education. Instant Classics having a great time all this Christmas week with a Charlie Brown Christmas. I mean, the end-all and be-all to my imagination of the Christmas specials. More important, I think, more significant than the anti-bullying message of Rudolph. I think here you have little children in a time of great war and upheaval and atomic times and Bay of Pigs. You've got the assassination of Kennedy. You've got the Vietnam War. All of these very adult things hang over the head of children. And in 1965, we get a great, tremendous reminder of what Christmas and the Christmas spirit really is. Take a look at I think the most obvious consumer moment in the story.
Well, I guess we better concentrate on finding a nice Christmas tree.
I suggest we try those searchlights, Charlie Brown. This really brings Christmas close to a person.
Fantastic.
Gee, do they still make wooden Christmas trees?
This little green one here seems to need a home.
I don't know, Charlie Brown. Remember what Lucy said? This doesn't seem to fit the modern spirit.
I don't care. We'll decorate it and it'll be just right for our play. Besides, I think it needs me.
The modern spirit, indeed. What a moment, right? That we go to a modern Christmas tree, and all those bright, almost somehow in the animation, he makes those yellow light bulbs glare at you, reflect off all of those metal trees, all the pinging, the knocking on them, all the glitter and the hype, and all of this artificiality, which is a beautiful metaphor for what Christmas had become all over the world, but especially in the West and especially in the United States. More and more gaudy, more and more glitzy. And you have these two little children, they are trying to work their way through and find the ideal tree. Now, Linus, who is aware of the spirit of the age, doesn't necessarily surrender to it. He's our philosopher, but he is there as an observer of the modern spirit, right, with all of its technology, Teflon. Think about the materials it took to fly to the moon. You got Christmas trees now that were beginning to look more like rocket ships than they did actual Christmas trees. And in the midst of all this, Charlie Brown stumbles across this little tree. It's not even really a tree at all. It's a twig. Linus makes the observation, gosh, do they still make wooden Christmas trees? And of course, because it's a bit of it's a bit of a runt, the runt of the litter. It's a standout reminder of the more organic Christmas pasts. Charlie Brown and his deep sympathy for the underdog he is himself can't help but falling in love with that tree. The grief he's about to get from Lucy is going to be epic, but because this is a Christmas special, just somehow it'll all work out. And when you have a moment, please consider sharing with your family our Peanuts Gang special lecture series. It's 4 segments on the Charlie Brown Gang, the Peanuts Gang, and the Christian origins of the story. We're looking at the Charlie Brown Christmas, which is the pinnacle of Christian ideology as it works through the story. But even in his day-to-day comic strips, you see this as well. So please download the app anywhere you can, Freedom Project app, the Freedom Project app. And not only will you get this lecture series on the Peanuts Gang, you'll get dozens of others and lots of other great content as well.
All right, before we go, let's show some love to our Patriot Club members. And today, the shout-out is going to Julie from Duquesne, Utah. Julie, thank you for supporting us. And that wraps up this show for Freedom Project. I'm Katie, and he's Dr. Duke.
Until next time, stay educated.